All right, hey, welcome to the channel. I thought it would be a good time to go live and show you guys what I'm looking at for the Bitcoin chart as we approach this Sunday evening weekly close on the weekly candle, right? So we're gonna go ahead and jump into the charts and just keep in mind this is a live AMA, so feel free to ask any questions as we go along. I'll probably stay on the stream for about a half an hour or maybe a little bit longer, depending on how it goes. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into some of the things that I'm looking at for this weekly chart uh, as we start to, you know, approach a decision time. I think for Bitcoin, I did put in the title here that we are focusing on of course, major event, the halvening coming up for Bitcoin in about what 4 or 5 weeks or so. So we are looking forward to having the miner supply being cut in half, and we're gearing up basically for another really bullish kind of sentiment in the Bitcoin and in the cryptocurrency market in general, um, just due to the cyclical fundamentals of Bitcoin. But what I want to touch on in today's video, guys, is just looking at the weekly chart. You can see we've got about 13 minutes or so until we close this weekly candle. And just looking at the actual structure itself, not a whole lot of information that we can really gather from from the actual candlesticks, other than, of course, this very, very bearish looking weekly candle that we saw. What was it? The week closing of January 24th, right? 3 weeks ago, we saw essentially a pretty decent looking breakout fake out. Um, as we kind of recall, right, we pushed up into this 61.8 fib, right? We kind of got stuck on there for about 5 weeks, a month or so. And then we pushed up, broke out up into the 50 fib, as you can see over here, right? And again, this is the volume as well. In the background, you'll see these bars, um, the blue and yellow bars sticking out horizontally. That is the volume profile indicator. So you can see if I click on it. So that essentially shows what price the volume is trading at. Okay. So that's why when you see this red line sticking out here, this very bright red line around the $28,000 mark, um, you can see that that's called the point of control, because that's actually where the most volume has traded, right? You can see that these are the biggest bars. That means that the most volume is traded around $28,000 or so. And you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of maybe some of the TA. I'm sure you guys are a little bit confused with the TA, but why I've got this arrow here, it's very important because typically from what I've seen in the past, Bitcoin market cycles, I've been around for about two and a half, almost three full market cycles. Right before the halvening, typically we've actually seen the market dump. All right, and that's just going off of experience. We see the halvening comes, everyone's anticipating it, everyone's anticipating that to be really hyped up and bullish. Uh, but what actually happens is we do get a little bit of a sell off, a couple weeks after the halvening. Now, it might not happen that way again, but just from an experience kind of angle, that's how I'm thinking about this. Okay, and what that would do was it will take us into what, April, because the halving is coming up around April, right? So, or is it a little earlier this year? It might be around March, April. So that gives us time essentially to be chopping around, because going back to my first point, this was a very bearish candle as we kind of chopped around here on that 50 fib. We pushed up and wicked right off of that 61.8. See that? And we didn't get a chance to close up there. So we've got lots of closes up here, right around this $42,000 level USD. We pushed up in 1 week and we we're looking like we were going to continue this bull market, and we whipped off of 48K, right? Just shy of the $50,000 level. So that wick right there, and then the close, right? We know just looking at the candle opened here, wicked all the way up there, and then closed right there. So I just wanted to point out that when you're looking at this chart on the weekly, and remember, I've got two fibs, basically, one from the top to the bottom, okay, and then one from the bottom to what I'm expecting to be the top. And you can see how that aligns really, really nicely, where you get this pushing up all the way into the 61.8, and then you can anchor a 1 actually on the 61.8 now. Because if you look at it, I'm actually syncing this up to where the price hit, but it just so happens to be right on the 61.8. So now that we have a new fib, we've got a 61.8 and a 1. So now we're looking for this retracement from the 1 down into its 61.8, which is right around here. See that? The 61.8. So I just wanted to point that out, right, on the weekly chart. The only thing that the candles really tell us, and if I just take everything off, right, just looking at the candles and looking at this candle right here, that is a bearish candle. Okay. I don't know exactly the exact terminology, but it's almost like a bearish engulfing candle. So that's the only information that we really have to help us understand what's going on in these past 3 weeks as we close the weekly chart in about 8 minutes. So looking at that, it definitely points to a sort of bearish setup, right? And I'm looking at April as the time when the real momentum will start after the halving. It usually takes place about a month or two even for the momentum of the price to catch up with the sentiment of the halving and also the fundamentals of the miners who are now seeing their supply cut in half. All right, so that's the weekly chart. Let's see what the daily's looking like, because one more thing I actually wanted to mention was, I do like to talk about how I need to see the price kind of reacting to my analysis in order for it to confirm it. Well, I also want to point out one thing, and again, I'm going to use this volume profile indicator, a very handy tool here on TradingView, and I'm going to go ahead and pick the anchored volume profile because I want to see since this breakout right on October 23rd of 2023, since this breakout, I want to know where's the volume trading. So for me to do that, actually, I selected the wrong tool. I'm gonna go for, instead of the anchored, I'm gonna go for the fixed range, and I want to pull it from here to here, and just see where the volume is. So as I do that, guys, you can see that this level right here, this 42K level, is a very big sort of battleground on this chart. This 42K level, the volume kind of gives it away, right? Um, and again, if we cannot hold on to these levels, the next key point of support isn't like all the way until 38K, right? And we could easily come down into 38K, give us a chance at 36 to 38K to scoop it up, potentially after the halving as we sort of gear up for what I'm expecting to see, which is essentially going to be new all-time highs. Uh, Probably we'll get up close to previous all-time high around that 66,000 mark around Q3. I think as we get into 2025, um, we will start to see this chart break out on the weekly into new all-time highs around 100,000. Obviously, is going to be a key level, and then if we do get a little bit higher, if you're lucky enough to start scaling out around these higher extension levels, then you might be able to get a little bit of a higher average exit price, but we'll see. I think once we get around that 261, okay, I think that it's time to start shifting your mentality from accumulation to distribution type of mindset. So that's what the weekly chart's looking like, guys. Let's see if the daily kind of confirms that now. So I'll get rid of this arrow. We don't need it anymore. Made my point. And I don't need the volume anymore. Although that's pretty cool, right? it's pretty cool. It's cool to see how the what's called the point of control has kind of evolved over time, right? So as we broke out, we had a little bit of choppiness right there on the 34K level. So that became the point of control, right? And I'm just referencing this thin red line here. So that was the point of control for a couple weeks, right? And then when we broke out, the POC actually jumped up to 38K and it lasted there for another couple weeks. And then on the third pump, now the POC's kind of gone up to 44K and look, it's even started to come down. See that? So it went up and then down. So that's not a good sign either. That's kind of telling me that there potentially is some downside coming. And look at that. I think March also would be a nice spot to look at in terms of timing. Um, so that's a kind of a key spot just from like a a kind of zoomed out perspective. This could easily dribble down, guys. You can take something like this, and again, look at the volume here at the bottom. See, so we are starting to see the volume. Uh, it's kind of tailing off, right? Let me just show you what I'm talking about here. So the actual volume, what I was showing you was the volume profile. That shows you the price, right? That shows you the horizontal where the price scale is. But the actual volume right here in time also shows you kind of it gives you information, right? So we're seeing that mm, I think I think we're starting to see how when volume spikes above the white line, that's that's higher than normal volume, right? Because the white line is an average. I think the white line is MA length. Yeah, we should probably put that to well, it depends what you like. I like it either a 20 or a 50. Just keep it at 20. So that's the 20 period average volume, right? So average volume is 19,000 Bitcoins every single day. That's what trades here well, in the index, right? We're looking at the index. So that tells me that this move is probably also starting to fade. Like the bullish momentum is really starting to fade, uh, because the volume's actually coming now below the white line, okay, and the white line's actually getting lower. It's coming down. So average volume is getting lower, and we've seen recently even more confirmation of that trend. Okay, so that's another reason why I do think the price action might soften up a little bit. Put the TA back on, and then the last thing that you might have noticed, if you've got a good eye for TA, is this white trend line, right? You could take a trend line tool by coming over here and just selecting this trend line tool, and you can take it from the bottom there at about 17K, right? And now extend it out to these lows where we kind of held support around that 28K mark, right? I think I might even tighten it up a little. Let's just squeeze it in there like that. Yeah. So that's the trend line, right? We do not want to see any closes below that. So technically what you can see is we could see this chop around. Where's my brush? I need my brush tool. Well, I don't really need it to show the point, but essentially you can, oh, you know what I want to do? I want to show you guys the bars pattern because this is a really just simple way to kind of build your expectations, right? Because what's happened in the past, you look left because that structure is going to leave clues about the future. So the last time we saw, look, volume started to tail off like that, following kind of like a big pump, kind of like a breakout fake out. We saw this sideways action, and I would pick it up probably from this is really what it's starting to look like right about here. So if you do that and you just take this bar action right here and what that looked like there, right? You can drag that up now, right? And then scale it up because we're not on the log scale, so you do have to scale it up like that. You could potentially see something like that. I mean, I'm totally kind of pulling this out of my you know what, but technically that could happen, right? And we did start to see, some sort of trend line breakage potentially, right? Some sort of potentially trend line breakage. So if we start to drift around here around this 43K level, it's totally possible that we could drop, what is it, like 15%? Like it's really not anything to be too worried about right there. Yeah, 15%, 13%, whatever. So that's a move that could happen. Don't get freaked out if that happens. I guess that's the whole point of this video today. If you could take one takeaway, do not get freaked out if we do start to come down. And remember the macro situation as well with risk assets. I know the stock market just made new all-time highs. Um, Housing market's still kind of struggling, but the Fed is not going to make any pivots, I do not believe, without seeing inflation come down, not only in the CPI, but also in assets, right? In risky assets. So the timing could work out. I'm trying to factor in as many things as I can. Uh, but you never really know what's going to happen. All you can really do is try to be prepared for all these different scenarios. Now, the bullish situation can easily happen as well, where we just chop around this 42K level, gain momentum, retest 48K, bust through it, and then you know pretty much back at all time highs. Maybe get a little snagged at that 78.6, right? Might get a little bit of a snag there, but ultimately, look, once we get into May, June, July, and then August, I think the summer is going to get really bullish post Bitcoin halvening, and the TA is telling me that as well. So we're building up a lot of volume, as you can see, a lot of nice volume at that 42K level, and yeah, just looking at this wick off the 618 is very much indicative of a reversal, right? Like that's about as good as it gets. Bit of a bit of a recovery, but ultimately we should start to see some lower prices in Bitcoin in the near term, right? Remember, in the long term, we know that I, you know, the in the long term, we do know that there's going to be new all-time highs. That's the way I see it. So, could be another buying opportunity. We have to wait and see. And then lastly, let's follow it up on the 4 hour. Let's see how that's looking. Yeah, so that does look like a pretty nice looking recovery on the 4 hour. Straight up the volume profile. 3 minutes into the close. Yeah, so see that? Really now reveals that the 61.8 and the 50% fibs. Actually, 61.8 hasn't been. Mm, it's a little high, but it's close enough. But really nice to see this chop, in and around this 50% fib level. Really validating.